Okay, everybody, our reading lesson is going to be about predicting today. So we are still using the Alex Rider Secret Weapon book. Hopefully you are enjoying it so far. So let's read our guided text. Oh yes, Crawley smiled. I know everything. Mrs. Jones looked back to Alex and began to explain. I'm sure I don't need to tell you, Alex, that terrorism is now the greatest threat to world peace. You'll have read about horrible incidents in New York, in London, and in Paris. The whole of the Middle East is a cauldron, and for the security services, it's a situation that is almost impossible to control, especially when you have so many tiny groups that are ready to strike at any time with no overall plan. Imagine how much worse it would become if those groups were able to get their hands on the most advanced weapons, by which I mean nuclear or biochemical technology. That's our biggest nightmare. A terrorist with a nuclear bomb, and intelligence services all over the world have been working together to make sure it never happens. Caffeinated or decaffeinated? Crawley asked. He had filled the kettle and flicked it on. I don't really mind, thank you. Mrs. Jones hadn't taken her eyes off Alex. It could be about to happen, she went on, and all because of a man called Darcus Drake. Who is he? Who is he? Alex had to ask. He's a very interesting person. For many years, he was a photographer working for the international press. He lived in London. He was wealthy. He won a great many awards. Darcus travelled the world taking photographs of war zones. That was his speciality. When bombs went off, when children were hurt, when the hospitals began to fill up, somehow he'd be there. He didn't care about his own safety. He made it his mission to show people what was happening in places like Syria, Yemen, Iraq, Sudan, and Ethiopia. The strange thing is, Alex, there was something almost beautiful about the images he took. He had a knack of capturing horror in a way that made you want to look. He sounds like a good guy, Alex said. He was, there's no doubt about that, but somewhere along the way he changed. I suppose it's impossible to keep witnessing so much pain and suffering and just click away with your camera as if it's got nothing to do with you. Darcus Drake came to believe that the West was responsible for everything he was seeing. He became more and more interested in terrorism until the inevitable happened and he became a terrorist himself. The thing is, he'd travelled all over the Middle East. He had made hundreds of contacts. He knew journalists, intelligence officers, field agents, local tribesmen. He even met some of the terrorist groups. He spoke 4 languages, including Arabic and Farsi. There's no question that he had a brilliant mind. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if there was a light bulb moment, but suddenly he realised he was in a perfect position to take control, to form his own terrorist group, fighting against the West, and that's what he did. Okay, so when we have predict questions, we are often thinking about what is going to happen later in the story, or what is going to happen in the story from start to end. So you might be asked about what the cover is and what does that suggest the book is going to be about. You might, like at the beginning of the week when we read the synopsis, we predict what we think might happen. You might be asked what is happening now, what do you think happened, what happened before this, and because of that, what do you think is going to happen later? You might be asked what does this paragraph suggest will happen next. So there might be something key in there that gives you a clue as what's coming up in the rest of the story. How do you think the choice of setting will influence how the plot develops? So are they in a setting that might be a war zone, for example, like in this story? Are they in a dark forest and something spooky is in the woods beside them, like in the story we are writing in English? Okay. And then you might simply be asked, do you think something will happen? Yes, no, or maybe, and why, using evidence from the text. Okay, so they're the kind of questions you might get when you have a predict question in front of you. Okay, so on the next slide, I'm going to show you your independent text, but again, it is on the PDF if you want to go on there and look at it, and then I will show you your independent questions. So here is your independent text. And then here are your questions. Have a really good go at predicting using what you have read.